Hey guys, today's quick video is about how to start a project. Basically, you know, when you're starting a project, there's different ways that you can go about it. And honestly, there's not really a wrong way. You want to go whatever gets you from point A to point B the fastest. And it all depends on what you're doing essentially. So, a lot of times when it comes to sculpting, before you even just start sculpting, plan things out. Figure out what you want to do first. What do you want to do in this program? Right? Do you want to create a full character? Do you want to create a head sculpt? Do you want to create a weapon? Do you want to create a mountain? Do you want to create a tree? Do you want to create a bridge? Those are the kind of questions that you need to ask yourself, in order to be efficient with your time and not waste time. All right, and that's kind of what this lesson is more or less about. So, for example, I'm going to show you guys right now, like if I was starting a sculpt on a head, I have a bunch of different options here. So if let's just say I was just doing a head sculpt, right? Just the top of the head only. This could be a good place to start. Now, you'll notice that, starting here maybe is not the best. We're going to have to do some cleanup if we do start with this because we have a lot of geometry. I can go down here. It's not so bad. But it's a good start. You know why? Because you already have the ears in place. You have the basics of a face already in place. And this comes in ZBrush, which is great. So it could be a good starting point. Another good starting point, like with the new ZBrush, 2019, by the way, what you could do too is you can go into geometry and you can go to ZRemesher and you can try to ZRemesh this and see what kind of results you'll get from it. You'll get a nice cleaner base to kind of work on. And you have enough geometry in this in order to actually work on a face, So here, I actually don't have my custom brushes loaded at the moment. Hold on, let me just pull up my menu. I'm gonna make another separate video on how to do this, with the brushes. But basically now what I can do is I can start, going in here and changing this face, any which way I want. Maybe he has a lower nose, whatever the case is. Could mask this area off, move this down a little bit. Maybe has a bigger jowl or something. But this, like I said, everything is just a starting point when it comes to this stuff, right? Traditionally, when you start with a piece of clay. And that's really kind of all they have to really start with. They have clay and armature, which is the metal in order for you to be able to use, like, for the wax. Not the wax, but the armature, like you could put foil on it and everything and then put clay on top of that, for your pose of your character and things of that nature. But again, all this is just a starting point. I mean, I could literally just, take this, smooth it down. We can just move all this stuff down and just start from here, and then from there, like I said, we can go ahead and make our brush bigger, and you can go ahead and just start going to town on this and create something entirely different, depending on what you're creating. Give him a bigger jowl line and things of that nature. Push and pull things. It's all about pushing and pulling with this program. Alright, and right now I'm just using the move brush. So what I did was I used the ZRemesher and we smoothed it out to get like a base, a better base or whatever to work from. A cleaner base rather. And then from there, like I said, you can just go to town on this thing. And you have everything in place in order to, do what you want to do, you want to you want to start sculpting in the air. You can go ahead and do that. You have everything in place. You don't even need any more geometry than what you have. You have enough geometry to work with by starting this way. And again, it could be, it could be a good starting point for you for your whatever you're creating. And again, this was if you're creating a head sculpt, like a bust, a head bust or whatever, right? But this is it. All right. So this is one, this is one way you can start. And you could even save a clean version or something. So every time you start with something like this. And in the end, it won't even look like this. It's, like I said, it's literally just a starting point. You have to start somewhere with this program. You can subdivide a few times. And, I mean, you could just start going to town on this thing if you want. Whatever you want to do. To bring out features. Carve in, sculpt out. Like I said, you could really just start going crazy on it. Okay, so that's just one. This is just one example. Of a way that you can start a project. So, I mean, obviously you need a lot more, we would need a lot more work on this, obviously. But you see what I mean? We started from this and, we ended up with this. I mean, but again, this is far, far from done. This is nowhere near done. This is literally me just demoing, how we would kind of go about this as a starting point. Like, the whole point of this is just a starting point. So, I mean, for this, I would still come back and start hitting it with other things, like you have to, kind of flesh things out, really kind of get it looking good. But again, just a starting point. Okay, so that's one way, to start a project. That's just one. So let's go through a different way. And you could, like I said, you just save this out. If you like the way this is going, go ahead and just save it. I'll just save it as whatever, head base or something. I mean, and this is just the base, but eventually you'll get something that'll look really good in the end, But that's a starting point. So that could be something if you're sculpting a head. If you're sculpting a full body, maybe you might even start with something like this, which is called the demo soldier. And again, you can go ahead and you can delete anything you don't need in here. All right, so I can go ahead and actually, just delete all this. All right. I can go ahead and delete all this and just focus on the anatomy of this, And there you go. You have a full body to start with, And maybe you just want to pose it. I mean, there's so many options, depending on what you're trying to do. But you could literally go in here and just, you could start posing it. Oops. Unlock this and, move this over to where like it would actually pivot from, and then you get a better kind of result. So you can kind of change things up and just work on it and just smooth everything out, working your details on over this, But this is, like I said, I mean, this is a base. This is what a base is all about. It's just a starting point. And then if you want to close on this guy, you could just hold control, mask an area off real quick, and you can extract, there's a rough, dirty pair of pants for him, So I actually created something called Extract Plus, which is really good for making this nice and clean looking. But this right here, you know, this is, like I said, this is a good starting point if you're doing a full body character. I would say, you know, if you were doing a male character, obviously, it could be a good starting point for you. I was trying something there, it didn't work. But you can go ahead and you can go deformation, and you can mask the areas off and just inflate it out too a little bit, you know. Okay. But again, this is a starting point. And then you know, just look at the geometry you have. I mean, you get poly groups right away, so you can actually, you know, group off pieces. I could just work on the head if I wanted to work on the head. I'm holding Control and Shift and clicking, by the way, guys. So, you know, if I just want to work on this one arm, there we go. I can work on this arm, Control, Shift, and click. And now I can just focus on just this arm alone and sculpt that arm. You know, so I can start coming in here and just start, you know, going over these forms. You know, like the deltoid, and, you know, kind of pushing and pulling things here. You know. Okay. Push up the, you know, the bicep or whatever. Yeah, maybe you want to make a nice cut in there. All right, but this is it, man. This is how you start a project. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you see these hands take a while to make, just hands alone. Like, I could sculpt hands right now, and, you know, you should learn how to sculpt hands, don't get me wrong, but if you're doing a project for yourself or whatever, you should have a starting point. You know, whatever the case is, you should start with something, right? You shouldn't just start from scratch if you're doing a character, to be honest. Like, you shouldn't just start from this, because it's going to take you way longer. I mean, if you're brand new at it, you should be practicing your hand sculpts. You should be practicing your legs and your arm sculpts. But I mean, to do those kind of practices, even to do those, you know, I would recommend you start with something like, there's actually a Z-Spear hand, right? So I recommend you start with something like a Z-Spear hand. You could start with the Z-Spear hand. This is in Lightbox, by the way, on the project. And let's just say you just want to pose this hand, you know. Maybe it's for an illustration even. So with that being said, you can go in here and just, I'm using rotate, by the way, and you can go ahead and start moving things around. Oops. There we go. You know what I mean? So you just click, and move. And before you know it, you have something as complex as a hand posed. And I mean, but again, this is a starting point, right? This, I mean, this doesn't look like, I mean, it looks like a bony hand, right? It doesn't look like an actual, it doesn't look like your own hand, right? There's no flesh on it. But this is a starting point. All right. Now, let me show you how you can, if you were to want to sculpt on this, because you can't sculpt on it in its current form because it's Z-Spears, you can go down here to Adaptive Skin, and you can click Preview, which is A on your keyboard. If you press A on your keyboard, it'll preview it, and this will be kind of results that you'll get. So you can go ahead and click Make Adaptive Skin, right? After you click Make Adaptive Skin, you have a skin hand here, right here. So just click that skin hand, and there you go. Now, I can go ahead and, you know, I can subdivide this, Control D, and I can grab my brushes, right? I'll kind of smooth this out a little bit first. I'll probably go down, actually Shift D to go down, and I'll just smooth all this out. I'll turn up my smooth intensity so I can really smooth this out. You know what I mean? Oops. And then from there, you can go ahead and add back. You know, you can go ahead and start adding tendons and everything else, and then real quick, if you wanted to add, you know, a little more oomph, like here, and go ahead and pop this out a little bit. Okay, smooth this piece out, and if you look at your own hand, you know, you'll be able to figure out how to do this stuff as well. Hands are actually, people have a hard time with hands, but I feel like hands are easy. But again, I mean, this isn't really a lesson on hands, but it's more about how to start a project, right? So each project, you know, has a means, like, what is your end game? What is your end game with what you're trying to do? You know, what are you trying to do? You have to ask yourself, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to do movies? Are you trying to do games? Are you trying to do film? Or are you just trying to make concept art? If you're just trying to make concept art, go to town. Go to town on this thing, you know. Go crazy. Like, if you're just going to use this for an illustration afterwards, then, I mean, you'll be pretty much golden at that point. You know, you could smooth all this out. We can even hit this maybe even with like a trim dynamic or something, just to get harder edges. You know, just smooth that out a little bit. Okay. Just bam. All right. There you go. I mean, like I said, this is just a starting point right here. Right? You could take this. Maybe, you know, like I said, maybe you can add this to an illustration or something that you're doing too. You know, maybe you just can't get the fingers quite right. So you could use this either reference, or you can just do a paint over on top of it, whatever the case is. But this is quick and dirty. But again, at least you can see the power of doing it this way. All right, so now what I want to show you guys is that I just want to show you guys another example here. If you were doing hard surface, you could start a few different ways. Hard surface meaning like if you were doing a robot, or I don't know, a PC case or a table, you know, anything like that. There's different ways to start that kind of project as well. So let me just see. So you could even start with a cube like this from the Z project, and then just go to press B on your keyboard to pull up your brush menu and click Z Modeler and turn on your polyframe, which is Shift F, by the way. And then you can go ahead. Now, there's too much subdivision actually in this, so you don't want to do it this way. So I would scratch that. You want to work low when you're first starting out if you're doing like hard surface stuff. So I would start with something a little bit easier to work with. I mean, you could even just, what is this set to? This is you could probably even Z-remesh. I don't know if you can Z-remesh this. Yeah, you could Z-remesh this, or yeah, you can bring this down. Maybe let's just say to 1,000. One is 1,000. So you Z-remesh that, you'll get something a lot lower. I mean, if you really, we could even take it lower than that, I'm pretty sure, but you can go and try it again. Okay. But this isn't the cleanest, obviously. But again, I mean, if you're doing hard surface, this could be a good way to start. But I think what would be a better way to start, actually, would be something like, I think this one here. Yeah, this one probably might be better even too. This is this was the actual one that people used. Cube Smooth. I mean, there's one with a bevel too, but basically, you know, with the Z Modeler brush, you can go ahead and start pulling out pieces, you know, to make like a hard surface looking piece. So again, if you're making, I don't know, if you're making a helmet or you're making something hard surface, then this could be a good way to start. And it doesn't look like much now, you know, but once you work it a little bit, and you can move this, you can move these around too, you know, so you really start to kind of work in these shapes here. But you know, like I said, once you start working this, and you could turn on something called dynamic subdivision, which it gives you subdivision, but it doesn't. It's kind of like how do I explain it? It's subdivision, but it's not like really applied to it. It's not like baked into it or anything, but it'll give you a nice preview of what's going on. And then you can even go in here, and you could smooth this out if you wanted to. You know, you could smooth things out a little bit to get a different shape going on. Again, I mean, and this is hard surface. Like if I'm making something hard surface, I'm not going to start with a head. You know, I'm not going to start with a head in order to get to this. It would make no sense, right? So, like I said, you got to figure out what you want to do, and then that'll be a good starting point for you once you know what you want to do, right? Again, you can take these things as far as you want. Depending on what you're using it for. If you're using it for a 3D print, I mean, this is already starting to look like a top of a helmet for like a character or something. You know, if you bring this down, pull this up a little bit, pull this up like right here, pull this down. There you go. Right, and you could just throw a head in there. Or maybe it's not even a helmet. Maybe it's something different. You could even, you know, duplicate your pieces of geometry, and you can go ahead and you can rotate it. Right, rotate 180 degrees. And maybe you want to change this piece a little bit, right? So maybe you'll just stretch it out or pull it in. Maybe stretch it downwards or upwards. And now it looks like a top of something somebody would wear. But again, this is starting points. This is all about starting point. We're not actually creating a project in this video today, but we're doing starting points basically. So can smooth this out. Kind of liked what it was doing there. And then we can go ahead, like if it looks too harsh, you can even like Z-remesh it, right? So you can go ahead and go Z-remesh and then smooth it out to get rid of to get a little smoother look. Or you can hit it with the flatten brush. And how much did it 5,000 count? Yeah. Okay. Made this kind of thick, but you get the idea. Trim adaptive. Trim dynamic on that. You know, there you go. You're starting to get something that looks kind of like a helmet shape. I mean, you could even combine these too, because why not? So I mean, you can merge these together. Just click merge visible, actually, because they're the only things that are on the screen. Then just go to the merged version, which will be together like this, and we could Dynamesh this. Dynamesh this will probably really help this to look like one piece of geometry. And after that, we could probably hit it with a clay polish, maybe. See what kind of results we get with that. Sometimes you get some cool stuff with that. Or, you know, I can back up and I can just Z-remesh this one more time as a whole piece this time. Take a look at the geometry and hit Control D to subdivide it now that we have cleaner geometry. Oops. And make sure your symmetry is on when you're working on this. Now you can go ahead and just, you know, go over these shapes. Oops. You know, maybe I'll mask. Maybe I'll make a mask here or something. Make sure you have back face mask on, or else it's going to do both. I think it's underbrush. It's probably underbrush. Surface. No. Can't remember where it is anymore. I have it set to a keyboard shortcut, that's why. Because, you know, sometimes with these menus they get so crazy. But yeah, you would want to turn on back face mask for this. And then you could go ahead and then you could make the, you could do what I'm trying to do. But I mean, what I could do too is I'll just hold Control and Alt and get rid of that mask on the back, and now we just have this piece on the front. You can go ahead and pull this out, pull this in, whatever you want to do, to kind of customize the way things look. Oops, I hit the history with my my wrist on my Wacom. But you can see, you know, this is, like I said, just a starting point. You know, who knows what this would even become. I mean, I might even save it and use it for something later. I don't know. You know, if I can make something cool with it. If this was a helmet, it'd probably be better to put a head underneath it so that we can see how it's fitting on a you know, on somebody's head. So, I mean, if we were just focused on just making this helmet, we could probably append. We can go to Subtools and go to Append. Oops. Go to Append, and I don't have any. We could either import a mesh if we wanted to, or we could just. I mean, we could probably even just do this if we wanted to, and make a quick head or whatever, if you wanted to. So something like this. Let me show you here. And that's why it's kind of good to have a head underneath this anyway. It's just to try to see how things are lining up, because if it's not lining up properly, you know, I'm not in symmetry, but if it's not lining up properly, then it's not going to work. All right, I mean, so I'll save this. What I'll do is I'll just save this as a hat or something. So I'm going to do this. I'll save this as a hat, and I think we saved our other thing, right? We saved our head base, right? So if we go back to our head base now, we can go ahead and we can append. We should be able, because we have the same files open, we should be able to append this, but I don't know if this is the version that has the, let me see. No, this is the older version. So we could load back the hat. Let me see if I could switch to it. We could switch to this, and then we probably have to okay. All right, let's back up. So take this piece. Wasn't even this piece, was it? It was the other piece. This piece here, right? And then what we can do is get rid of this. We can export. We could probably just export this for now. And then go back to our scene with the guy. And then what we can do is we can hit import. And we can import the hat. All right, there we go. All right, so now Now we have something to kind of base this thing off of. It's not just, we're not just making a hat in thin air. You know, and then from there we can go ahead and size it up on him, on his head. But obviously you want to make sure you have an accurate kind of head sculpt first. That's good in dimensions and everything like that. Probably move this, scale this outwards. Hold on. Why is it doing it backwards? Kind of weird. Now we want to push it outwards. So you could probably even kind of push it outwards like that. You know, maybe have more than we need, but, and then from there, you know, you can go ahead and get this working on the thing. I'm gonna go down in sub levels because it's hard to move. Zero mesh, Dynamesh. Okay, let's just hit that with a Dynamesh. And now I had way too much geometry or something going on with that. I don't know what I did to it, but it was going really slow for me for some reason. And I have no clue. Maybe all this just goes away. Yeah, maybe we push this. I don't know how to push this in. And there you go. Now you can just start fitting this on his head. You know, depending on what, I don't know, maybe he's a warrior of some kind, or maybe it's not that extreme. You know, but like I said, starting points, it's really all about just starting points and just figuring out, you know, what you're trying to create, where you want to start on something. You can just save this out too. I encourage you to save out whatever you make. You just never know if you'll be able to use it, you know. Okay, so that was another example. And then, like, you know, if we were starting with an animal, we have a dog here, or we can go in Z-Spears and we have other animals in here as well as a starting point, or we can just create our own. I mean, so we have tons of options. What's this one is? I think is a quadruped. Let me see how this one looks. Oh, this one is kind of cool. You know, so maybe this might be a cool starting point here, right? But maybe we have more than we need, so we can hit Alt and get rid of some stuff. Yeah, maybe we don't want him to have a snout like that. You know, maybe we can go ahead and hit and go to the move, and you know, maybe he's really like up there. Yeah, maybe he's down a little bit here. You can take perspective off and kind of see what's going on here a little better, and pull his legs up a little bit, just to make sure they're on that line. You know, if you get something like this, like where you can't see what's going on, that means like there's a Z-Spear going into another Z-Spear, and you gotta kind of like, you gotta reposition things because they're too close together. And make sure your brush size is really small when you're grabbing these Z-Spears, because if it's not, you're gonna grab too much, you know. So let's see how we can do this here. Yeah, maybe that's hitting the ground. Maybe he has his head really low. Maybe he's like, he's sneaky or something. I don't know. And like that, yeah. So if I'm doing a creature, you know, I might start with something like this, right? And then I would just go to something like, well, we did this before with the hand, but you do it adaptive, and you can go ahead and just click make adaptive. And after you click make adaptive, go up to your tool, and you're going to see there's a skin version right here, okay? And this version is the version, you know, that you could start going to town with, start sculpting on, you know, doing whatever you want to do. So you would first, what I would do, like I said, I would just kind of smooth things out, kind of like that. I would make sure my mesh is clean as well. I don't think now it really matters too much. We can even dynamesh this. If we dynamesh this, we'll make it a cleaner, like a nice cleaner mesh kind of to start with, right? And we can go ahead and just start really, you know, going to town on this thing and figuring out, you know, what is this, right? You know, maybe give him some notches in his back, nachos. Give him some notches here, something. Pull out his stomach a little bit here. Again, it's all about the starting point. You know, it's really is all about the starting point. And there's so many different ways to start, like I said, in ZBrush. So, you know, when you're doing your projects, like I said, start with whatever's going to get you from point A to point B fastest. Yeah, I don't like that. We'll probably pinch that. Maybe it's like, yeah, that looks a little better. I don't know what it is, but you know, and then from here you can just really just start go in and refining things. And I can't find my one brush today. You can use the Dame standard, for example, and cut in the mouth here. You know, you already know where this is going, kind of. You know, it's already creating something, and you already knew what you were doing. You were creating. You weren't just messing around. And there's nothing wrong with just concepting, just messing around at first. Like if you just want to play around and sculpt and see what you make, then that's cool too. You know. But this is about just how to work fast, how to go from point A to point B fast. That's what this is all about. Oops. Oh, that looks weird. I think it would be cool if you had like a lump like on his head, like of that stuff. Maybe not so much, maybe a little bit. Yeah, like a little notch or something. That's kind of cool. Yeah. More of that dinosaur look, I guess. He had those cool kind of notches on his back. I don't know if they're going to be plate, or if they're just his spine, or if he has plates on his back. Let me see. You know, just go in there and go to town. You know, just play around and figure it out. Figure out your design. Figure out your shape language. What are you trying to make? You know? Alright, well, I hope you guys, you know, learn something, learn a different way to kind of approach your work when you're starting off in ZBrush. be cool to see how you guys start your projects. Give me a comment and let me know, how do you usually start your projects? Do you have any unique ways of doing it? And what's worked the best for you? All right, but anybody who's new, that's been struggling, trying to figure out, how do I start? What do I do? I hope this really helps you to just be able to start, to just get your feet past that starting line and just start making something. All right, great. Well, I hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for tuning in to Let's Learn 3D. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.